Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Language Fuel podcast. Again, we're trying out this video format and seeing how we go. So wonderful to be here. Hope you enjoy today's episode. Last week, we launched the premium membership, which is very, very exciting. It's something we've been working towards for a little while. So as a premium member of Language Fuel, you get access to all of our academy courses. And as well as that, you also get access to our private Facebook group, so we can discuss the courses, you can ask questions of each other, of the Language Fuel team, and we're there to support you. So that's, a 24/7 offering online. Now, we're not always online, but, you can access the courses and certainly hop in the group, and we'll be there and answering questions, as we can throughout the day. So very exciting offering. We are doing a foundational membership offer until the end of 2017. So if that's something you're interested in, this is the time to join, because it's our all-time low, just to get a bit of critical mass in there. And from 2018, we will be putting our standard pricing structure in place. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that today. Today, I wanted to actually have a look, talk about a topic that has come up online in another group that I'm part of. And it's really defining what exactly is fluency. And the reason why I'm interested in this in particular at the moment is that Leslie and I are working on a course as well. It's in the pipeline, will be in the Language Fuel Academy, early next year, probably early 2018. And the topic of the course is what is fluency and how do you achieve it? So we've been brainstorming and doing our research and making sure, we're in line with the literature on second language acquisition and stuff like that. So then what happened is that I was online and there was this discussion saying, they put a video on of a guy who is called a hyperglot, and he was interviewed by the media, and it said, he's fluent in 24 languages. And the person who posted that said, hey, I'm a professional linguist, I'm a translator, I speak, 6 different languages. How on earth can anybody be fluent in 24 languages? He said, I just really don't understand, and I do this stuff for a living. That's what the comment was. And the thread went on and on and on and on about everybody giving their opinions about what it meant to be fluent and all this kind of stuff. So I wanted to kind of define where we're up to in terms of our thinking and research on this. Now, first of all, I don't want to say anything bad about anyone who calls himself a hyperglot. There's undoubtedly some extremely talented linguists out there, and I use the word linguist in the broadest sense, not just academic linguists, but those who, multilingual people. Sometimes people call them polyglots. And for sure, there are families who are multilingual, so the children, grow up speaking the language of the mother and the language of the father, which can be quite different, and perhaps the language of the community they live in, which could be different again. And children like that very quickly become trilingual, for sure, very, very fluent at those languages, very competent. And then they may learn other languages and move countries. So there are absolutely people who are considered native speaker-like, if we're going to use that term, or extremely competent at many languages. And I don't want to, criticize them in any way, because that definitely does exist. But I would like to raise doubt when people say that they have a high competency level in 24 languages. So let's talk about this word fluency. I guess that's what I want to be doing, is defining when people say, I'm fluent in such and such a language. What does that actually mean? What does it mean in the academic literature? And how do we understand these claims? On social media and programs, you see these programs all the time that say, become fluent at X language in 3 months or 4 months or whatever it is. So my take on that is that the word fluency actually just means automaticity. So let's break that down: automatically coming out of your mouth. So smoothly, if you like, and that could be smooth on many levels. So your recall is very fast. You're able to quickly respond when people ask you a question in the language. Your grammar is automatic. You're not necessarily having to think, how do I put together a passive structure, which is what I want to say in this instance, or how do, does the verb come after the object in this language, or does it come before? You're not thinking about any of those things when you are fluent. It just automatically comes out. So that That's that level of being automatic, including your pronunciation. It's just very, very smooth. That's what fluency technically means in the literature, a lot of the linguistic literature. Now, I'm very aware that the general public is using the word fluent to mean competent. In other words, perhaps native speaker like, or something like that, extremely able in the language. That's not what it means in academic literature. So fluency is a way of speaking, an automatic way of speaking that you can have at any competency level. So if we separate out the idea of competency, in other words, how much of the language can you use, how much can you understand, and how deep is your understanding and your depth of vocabulary. That's competency. So if I'm a beginner in a brand new language, let's say I learn one sentence today, and here's an example. So if you've been a listener of the podcast before, you'll know that for a while my family there was learning Spanish. We've actually made a decision to plan in a holiday, a vacation that we've been dreaming of for a couple of years, which is to go to Europe and cycle down the Danube, or the Donau, which is the German word for the river, because we love cycling here in New Zealand. It's a wonderful place to cycle. So because we have made the decision that in a year and a half we're going to go to Europe and do this cycle trip, so we have a little bit of time to save up, the family decided, well, we'd better start learning German, because we're going to absolutely go to Germany, and we'll be going through Austria a little bit, and then we head out further down the river. So I do speak German. I lived in Europe for a couple of years when I was much younger, and I studied it. So I've become the teacher in the family, as well as the other tools and Duolingo and so on. So the first day we were sitting around the dinner table, and I taught them the phrase, "Kann ich die Butter haben?" Can I have the butter? Because I guess we had bread and butter or something that we were passing around the table. So everybody is saying, and we made sure their pronunciation was okay, did a little bit of drilling, kann ich die Butter haben? Kann ich das Brot haben? And we just practiced the same sentence, just swapping out the object, das Wasser, das Brot, die Butter. But everybody had the one sentence down pat by the end of dinner, everybody. And I would then, in that situation, say they had become fluent at a very low competency level. Like they had one sentence, that's all they had. They couldn't greet themselves, greet anybody. They couldn't introduce themselves, couldn't say my name is, nothing. Just, kann ich das Brot haben? Can I have the bread? Can I have the butter? So one sentence, but they were fluent because it came automatically. I would point to something, they would say it, we would pass it down the table, and so on. So that's just quite an extreme example, obviously, of how fluency and competency are very different. You can be fluent in a language at a very low competency level. Now, obviously, when you're learning a language, you don't want to be fluent in just one sentence. Like that's, quite clear that there is a journey ahead to learn a whole lot more vocabulary, a whole lot more structures, understand the cultural implications and the usage, situations and appropriateness and all of that sort of stuff. So there's a huge learning curve still to come for my family in German in this instance. But, if anybody learning a language has a lot of learning to do. But the aim is to be fluent at every level of competency that you achieve, whether you're at the very beginner stages and a handful of phrases, maybe your first 100 words or first 100 phrases, you want to be able to say them fluently before you move on to then learn more words and more phrases and that sort of thing. So getting back to the original situation where I'm online, there's this video posted where somebody's a media outlet is claiming that this man is fluent in 24 languages. Yes, I would agree with that. That's absolutely possible. He, for sure, probably has a handful of sentences and phrases in all of those languages that are very automatic. So I don't have a problem with that. And he did, even in the little video clip, it was quite interesting to watch, and I'm sure you could Google it if you were interested. Google hyperglot and you'd find it. he spoke a few sentences in each language, and they put the little flag in the corner so that those of us who don't know all of those languages understood which language he was speaking at the time. I certainly don't speak all of them, so I can't guarantee that the pronunciation was correct or that his grammar was right. No idea, but it's likely that it could have been. I have no problem understanding that. However, I don't imagine that it's possible to have an extremely high competency level in all of those 24 languages. So when I'm saying high, there's different competency frameworks out there, one of them being, for example, the Common European Framework, CEFR. I think I'm missing a word in there. Anyway, it's the European, we call it the European Framework here, whatever the official term is. Starts at A1, goes to A2, B1, B2, and then C1, C2. And when you achieve C2 level, it's similar to being native speaker-like. That's how they kind of define it. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff online. You can certainly research that if you're interested. So my question would be, is he at C2 level in all of the languages? And I think that would be very difficult to achieve unless your full-time existence was about reading books, reading novels in all 24 of those languages and keeping up with the latest vocabulary. So technology, that's something that's constantly changing, obviously. So there are new words all the time in technology that a language will have to incorporate into its vocabulary. So, keeping up with those words in 24 languages would be quite hard. Could he study at a university, which again requires quite a high competency level? So maybe C1, certainly C2 you could study at a university. So being able to read academic or technical texts and discuss them with your classmates, with your lecturer, your professor. So that kind of high level of competency is probably not where that person would be in all of those 24 languages. Now, I have no doubt that he's a very clever man, and he probably does have a high level of competency in, maybe 6 or 7, 8, I don't know, and I don't want to judge. This is not really about him in particular. But I just wanted to put a little context around that in terms of, when people talk about being fluent, the general public often confuses the word fluent with competent, a high level of competency, but that's not the case. And so the last thing I wanted to leave you with is just that ideal of thinking, hey, when I'm learning a language or when I'm teaching a language, if you're a teacher, try to get your students or you, if you're the learner, to become fluent at that level wherever they're at, even at the A1 level. They can introduce themselves, they can greet other people, say a few, common phrases and words. That needs to become automatic, and automatic on all levels. So recall, that's memory, drill it, do memory games, play lots of role plays, use flashcards, whatever the techniques that you have in your back pocket. Do all of that so that the recall is automatic for what they know. Pronunciation really, really helps with all of that. A, because it comes out smoothly and fluently, but B, because when you have a good grasp productively of pronunciation and the actual sounds and combinations that are in that language, your receptive skills in terms of hearing it and processing it in your brain are much greater as well. So you'll be able to learn faster when you're hearing them because you're actually perceiving the small differences in sound. So that's something a lot of people kind of forget, that it's not just the productive pronunciation, it's the receptive pronunciation. That, if you really nail that skill early on in your language learning journey, then you're able to grow quicker, I think, because you can hear it quickly, know where that fits in, understand what the word was that you actually heard, and then that just aids with your memory and all that sort of thing and recall. So yeah, ideally fluency at every competency level, but they are two quite separate things. We will, as I said, Leslie and I are working on a course all about this to make it super clear. We've got some really funky ideas for activities to help really cement those concepts, and we're doing research into some published competency levels, including the European framework, but there's ones for every language. Well, for a lot of languages, not every language, I'm sure. Published ones that you can measure yourself against or measure your students against those competency levels, and certainly exams, obviously, for measuring those competency levels. So we'll be talking about that, and also producing some kind of how-tos for language learners to understand what competency level they're at and where their next steps need to be. So that's a course coming soon, coming in 2018. And of course, we do have courses on pronunciation already. So if that's something that is of interest to you, we have a course published now on how to learn the sounds of another language. If you are a learner and you're struggling with really, the details that you're hearing, something's not quite right, there's a lot of work there to perceive and produce sounds that are different from ones in your mother tongue. And we also have one on how to teach the sounds of other languages. So phonetics, really, articulatory phonetics from the teaching side and from the learning side. They are there, and like I said earlier, they really do contribute to fluency quite a lot. So definitely worth doing. Thanks for listening. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Hope to see you in the Language Fuel Academy. See ya.